Hello, all you cosmic travelers and wanderers. This is Darlene Grift and K. Melissa Waterman, inviting you to join us today in our episode of Expansion from Within, Exploring Multidimensionality.
Let me introduce you to my friend and dear colleague, Darlene Grift. She is a lifetime experiencer, a medical intuitive, and a multidimensional mediator for over 35 years. She's also an author, an artist, a teacher, and a mentor for spiritually invested people.
And K. Melissa Waterman is my friend and colleague, and she's an intuitive mentor, a spiritual teacher. She also works with energy on many levels. In the past, Melissa has worked with Dr. Joe Dispenza on his research team.
Join us on our journey of meeting multidimensional beings, exploring what it means to be human, and expanding our spiritual evolution. It's episode 5. We're going to talk today about incarnating. Are you ready?
Yes.
What happens exactly when we incarnate?
There's a lot of preliminary discussions before incarnating on the multidimensional level. When a soul level decides that they want to come in, especially as a human, because we are the biggest platform that I'm aware of in the cosmic realm of offering a plethora of choices in many areas, as well as our emotional capacity for as many emotions as a human can have. There's the lessons that need to be addressed before you come in. Like, what do you want to experience this lifetime? What capacity do you want? Is it something that you want to rectify from another lifetime, or is it something that you want to try new? And that's why it's important that the non-judgment piece of looking at people, that the people that maybe are homeless, or the people that are violent, or the people that we might have some sort of judgment about them, is we don't know what their ideas were or their journey is about why they chose what they chose in some way. And maybe it went awry. They might not have chosen that, but the choices that they made once they got here took them in another direction. Before incarnation, it's very more directed, but loosely. Not everything is planned out. Not everything is, oh, this is what's going to happen, and then there's going to be this, and then there's going to be this. It's more about, what do you want to experience, and who do you want to have in your life? What parents do you want, and why? What do they bring to the table that you're going to share genetics with, as well as maybe past life with, as well as whatever they are as parents? So all of that becomes kind of the mix, becomes the ingredients of what you're looking for in your incarnation. Even your spirit guides, who do you want that to be? Is that somebody that was an ancestor that crossed over? Is that a multidimensional part of yourself? Whether that's future or past, it gives a framework. It's like an outline, and then the subheadings and everything get filled in once you're here.
I was under the assumption that we were choosing experiences that would help us clear past timelines, or to help us evolve, or to grow, to gain wisdom for my particular soul age. Can you speak to that? Is that what you're talking about?
There's probably a percentage, I don't know how high that would be, of incarnating souls that would want that. I mean, that seems like the logical thing to do from what we're talking about, and we're on that path of wanting to know more about ourselves and evolve, while we're here on Earth. But I wonder, because there's so much diversion and diversity, I wonder if some souls come in just because they want to experience something. They're like, well, let me just try this because I haven't tried it yet. Let me try violence. Let me try coming in knowing that I won't make it through my first year. Let me come in with a deformed body. Sometimes I don't know if we can say straight across the board that you come in the desire, the hopes, the will to evolve in a way that feels progressive.
A person could choose to clear past timelines,
yes,
and to clean up some of the baggage, but
yes,
that isn't what all beings are doing. That's what
I can't say that it is, because nothing's for all. There isn't any consistent, every soul wants that evolution. I can't say that with feeling like that's 100% honest. It feels like there might be a certain amount that don't do that, or they don't do that for one incarnation or whatever. So it doesn't feel, they're saying that like you can't make a blanket statement that everybody wants that.
It's so funny how I assumed that we all started out as the soul age of 0 or 1, and that then we were narrow-minded and closed, and then something happened over the time or the many lives that we were 1, and then we graduated to being 2. And
That's the time. That's why we need to see things linear.
It's not linear. I totally get that. I've done enough of these podcasts to remember that.
Yeah. It's not linear. And you could be a being that may be highly evolved more than a human is on that broad scale, more than we are right now. Let's just say that they could be more highly evolved. And maybe they want to come into a human body to assist in a different way. But it means it'll look like to us that they are lowering their standards to come into a human body. Like when you think of masters and teachers that have come in, that, you know, whether that's Jesus or Buddha or whatever, they have chosen to come into a physical body to be a teacher for us. They're not in their evolutionary state of increasing from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. They chose on a different level.
Right. I remember Alan Watts speaking about, I think it's called This is a Dream. He's saying if every night you go to sleep, you're having a whole life. And then at first you're saying, okay, well, you know, let's try this. Let's just see. And then at some point you've tried everything you can think of because you're eternal. And so then you throw the dice and you're like, okay, let's just see if all kinds of different things can happen. That makes a lot of sense to me, but I don't think I ever integrated it into my belief system in a way like, oh, of course there are people that are just throwing the dice and any old thing could happen because they're in for the experience. I think I've also held the belief that a soul wants every experience. And so they may come back to get one particular experience that the whole life is a crapshoot, but they're after one experience they've never had before. And so all of those things could be true.
All of those things. And speaking as the evolves would look at it, it's you can't pigeonhole or be narrow in the choices that why certain beings come in to be human, because there's nothing in the universe that's that constant.
Right.
Everything is choice and everything is flux. To say, oh, all souls want to do that, not necessarily. It may be a small percentage, but it's not for us to say all of them.
Let's go back for a second to the process before we begin to incarnate. Can you talk more about the alignment and maybe a vetting process?
First, intention is everything. Bring a soul in, and that intention is, I want to experience abundance in this lifetime, because I've never had that. I've had 16 lifetimes of being on the streets or having less than or feeling less than. And so I want to have abundance. That soul level, it's a co-creative process. What parents might provide me for that, or at least provide me for the opposite of that, so that I can empower myself to have abundance. There's always two sides of the coin. You bring in somewhat of the parents' decision of what that is. Is there a spiritual agreement? Because the parents are probably here. So it becomes a spiritual agreement on a dimensional level that, okay, yes, I will bring you in, or I have that possibility of bringing you in. I will try to bring you in, but that fits. And then what are your lessons in abundance? Because there's so many lessons even in the womb experience with any of our projected intentions for lessons. It starts right from conception. It's not like wait till you're born and then, no, it starts from conception. And then once you get here, so you have that before, you have maybe your parents and understanding, your team of who will your spirit guides be? Do they change according to, like, yeah, maybe I have 3 of them for my first 5 or 6 years. And then would you be invited? You would invite in, maybe there's another team or another 1 or 2, but that can all change too, because of choice. You're not at just your choice up until you're out of that house or out of the household, grown up enough to be considered on your own. You have the choices that your parents make for you too, that you have no control over, or your schools make for you, or your mentors, or your siblings, or any of that. So you can only have like a close proximity of what you want to experience in the hopes that you stay on your track and you attract through the law of attraction. You attract that to you so that you have abundance, through your life in some way or another.
Right. Do you think the incarnation experience will change as the energy on the planet and the timelines are more cleared? Do you think that changes the incarnation experience?
Well, yes, as we move through disclosure on all levels, which is what's been happening for several years now, it's been like a slow leak of disclosure from whether governments or officials or our schools, our medical, there's so much disclosure of what's working and what isn't working. And we're at the place of most things are in that state of not working as they were. So we're developing what hopefully will work for the future. So as we're working through this disclosure time, as we're cleaning up ourselves, as we're evolving, as we're raising our vibration, as we're waking up, as whatever those words are that we're using, the eventuality is our past will become more distant. We're not holding it genetically. We're not holding it in our DNA. We're not holding it cellularly. We're not captivated or consumed by that. We are in a different place. The incarnation, what might change with that is not healing as much as what can we do now together? What can we do for Mother Earth that hasn't been done? The possibility of the inventors coming in more, which I think is already happening in some way. We have to get through this segue to bring up the next couple generations, like even the autistic children that have been coming in for the last 15, 20 years that are diagnosed as autistic. A lot of those are savants. Some of them, they're not connected emotionally, which might be a good thing, right? They're not connected emotionally so that maybe they can do something else for us, with us, so that we can see the possibility of who they are. Yes, I think that the incarnation, once we get more separation from our past and our past timelines, the intention to incarnate will be different. It has to be different, because why would you come in to clear up something that doesn't need to be cleared up?
Right. Can you say more about the womb experience? You mentioned that it starts in the womb, but how big of an impact does the womb experience have if we've made certain choices and some things change once we're here, and we're here from the moment of conception? Can you say more about that?
I can speak from my own personal experience of remembering my in utero experience as a mother that was very toxic and not supposed to be pregnant with me. And she held off telling anybody till she was 6 months. So at around the 3-month mark, when her body started to become more toxic, I remember the disconnection. There was no manual. There was nothing to put this body together, and feeling very awake that I had to do that. Like I had to put this body together, not realizing that maybe the body had a mind of its own and it was going to put itself together. There was no relaxing in the womb state for me. It was more of a separation. I couldn't hear her heartbeat. I didn't have the book. There was no manual. I felt very disconnected from spirit because it was like a heavy fog. You can't move too much, because if you move too much, the toxins would be aggravated. Those 6 months from 3 to 9 months for me were very traumatic in the choices that I made. But I can tell you, I might not have planned that. And there was a loss of a twin at 3 months, which I think woke me up, because we were not, we were fraternal, 2 females, but fraternal. But when I saw her leave in a red mist, I realized that I lost something. I realized that I was going to do this by myself. There wasn't that team effort. When I look at what I experienced in the womb, it prepared me for what I do. I put people's pieces together. That's what I love doing, because it comes from all directions. Now there's no fog between me and the spirit level or their guidance system. There isn't that. There's more of a direct communication of, oh yeah, let me show you this and let me tell you this. And those 6 months or more of where it was more toxic that kept me from that I felt like I had to put the pieces together, has given me the strength and the courage and you just do what you have to do. That's how I feel like I work with people. You just do what you have to do to address whatever they're bringing in and putting their pieces together so it makes sense to them. I can tell you that, that's from my experience. In the clients that I've worked with, there's so many that go back to the womb or birthing in what their mother was going through. Was she being violated? Was she an addict? Was she drinking? There's some people that didn't know that you don't drink. So what did that do to that child's choice for the rest of their life of how do they compensate from that? And is it attached to their mission? Because maybe it is. Maybe you judge mom about, wow, she drank the whole time I was maybe one glass, but I am compromised with that in some way. I'm codependent because of it. So how does that feed into maybe what your mission was? So that those first choices come up soon as you're conceived, even how you're conceived. Right. Is it conceived in love or was it something else?
I think everyone can think of their birth experience or their utero experience and think, oh, it could have been better. But if we chose this mother and we chose whatever her situation was, to look at it differently. Accountable.
And you can look at it in the negative way if you've had a negative experience in growing up or in the womb, right? You can look at it in a negative way. It took me 10 years to get through my womb experience with how I was kept attracting that into my life, right? Uh-huh. But you can take a look at the negative. Oh, I lost a sister. Oh, or you could take a look at how it prepares you for something. Mm-hmm. Like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger in some way, right? If you have that perception of allowing that. So it's changing the mindset. That's a big thing with incarnating is if you have a negative mindset, guess what? You're going to attract it over and over and over and over again, but if you view it differently, then something else can happen. Then you can attract something, maybe more of what you chose before you even got here.
Right. And so it really is a little mind twisty. My mother might have smoked when I was in utero. That could impact my health currently. Maybe a weakness, a lung weakness, which maybe might show up as more sadness in my life due to Chinese medicine and the association with lungs. And yet that could be the choice I made to have more sadness, to deal with sadness, to cut the timelines around sadness, to not just negative. It sounds negative. My mother smoked. I'm impacted. I have all this health issue with lungs and maybe sadness. But in fact, it's the journey. It's the actual process I chose.
Well, it seeds it. Like we talk about seeding the field. You're now seeding your future in some way by what happens a lot of times in utero. And some people don't even know what happened. They may know about their birth experience because mom and everybody else has told them about that, right. But they have to go back. I remember working with somebody, this was years ago. I was doing the one brain diffusion, which you really check the body to find out and it went back to conception. And she was adopted. She was like, I what was going on there. And what was coming up, and she was getting dizzy, is that this happened when both of her parents were drunk and they were young. And so then they let her go for adoption, right? She found them some years later and they confirmed that, which was interesting that her body, one, knew that, and that she had a cellular or a visceral response to it by getting dizzy when I was working with her, like as if she was a bit drunk, right?
Yeah, that's wild.
So the body does remember.
Right. Of course it does. Everything is in the Akash, right? It's all remembered in some way, whether we can actually bring it up or not. I have a question here about many people that I've worked with talking about having resistance to being here, not wanting to come, making some choice in utero, like, oh no, never mind. I changed my mind.
Yeah.
And then feeling their whole life like a complete outsider and a stranger and wanting to go home wherever
Yes.
home is. Wonder if you and the evolves can speak to that. If we make soul choices, what the heck happened then?
We're assuming that they say, I want to do this, and then they get here and say that we don't. But what if your choice was to experience the experience of not belonging?
Right. And it started right away.
And it started soon as whatever that choice was that came in, whether that was too hard or, I'm not going to get loved enough, or, oh my God, look at the parents that I picked, I didn't realize, or whatever that is. Could it be the fact that you chose on some level, maybe before this, to be not included? That was your experience that you wanted. And then how do you break through that? Is it to experience that all your life? Is it just like you're working through a timeline? Do you feel not included, but you work towards being included, being visible, being accepted, being embraced, being loved? Do you work towards that in all your relationships? Or do you just assume the position of, I'll never be that way, I'm not lovable, I'll never be included, and I want out of here? Which brings us to wanderers, by the way. Yeah, wanderers.
Cosmic wanderers.
I know two of them, and there's probably many more that come in here with the hope and the desire to change things. They're big generators or manifestors that they want to change things. And then something in their life derails them. And all they want to do is they're part of that they want to leave. But this is something as a cosmic wanderer that they tend to not be satisfied in their life in some way. Like they want to leave. They don't want to be here necessarily, but it's a little different than I don't really want to be here. It's more about, I want to go someplace else. Like, why doesn't this place suit me? Like before in my other place, I could just manifest something. I could just think of something and it was right there. Like they go back to that past in some way of what it used to be. Like, what's wrong with humans? That they can't get it. Are they dumb? Are they ignorant? Like, what are they that they just don't see what I see? Because that wandering space, they've been all over in many different dimensions, in many different cultures or species. They have a bigger picture. And then when they come here and they feel the confinement and the restrictions and the laws, all of that we are governed by, that we believe, that we turn over our sovereignty to. When they come into that, it's for some of them, it's just too much. Like, I want to leave, I want to go home. And what is wrong with you? Because they want to be on their next trip. I'm done with this. You guys aren't getting it. I want to leave.
Do they know they're cosmic wanderers?
I believe they do. Two that I know have identified themselves and have been identified as cosmic wanderers for that very reason. If something happened to derail them from their intentional focus of what they could do here, and maybe it's many choices, it's not just one thing, but then they're dissatisfied with being here. They're trying to find another purpose in staying here. Why am I here? I want to be someplace else where I can make an impact, where I find my people that are willing to create in an instant.
Are they looking to heal that moment that derailed them? Would that help them?
If they're willing to look at it. That's the choice, right? Are you willing to look at, maybe it is totally back to the womb experience. Maybe it is their early childhood that takes them into being totally disappointed and fragmented, and I can't really do what I want to do. Or maybe I'll take this avenue. Or maybe they just don't listen to their innate wisdom all the time that would have kept them on the track, but maybe they didn't do that. Maybe it was easier to go another way, but they really didn't stay on track of what they wanted to accomplish. So it becomes, okay, screwed that up. I'm now 90 years old. I want to be out of here. Or I'm 60 years old and I want to be out of here. This is too hard. It's too hard. I'm not going to get what I want in this lifetime.
I feel like I might know 10 or 20 cosmic wanderers.
I think there's more cosmic wanderers around. When I talked to this one person that I'm thinking of, we were talking about being a wanderer, and I have this, it's like a blanket that covers a chest of mine, and it says, not all wanderers are lost because they're not. Some of them here are here to just prove to others that you can be in a wandering space, like no attachment to anything. That's another thing about wanderers. Sometimes they just can't, won't, refuse to attach to anything. I call them escape artists or runners. They will leave relationships, they will leave businesses, they will leave whatever feels like it's too confining for them because they're wanderers. They're like nomads. You don't stay in one place too long.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I've never thought of this before, and many people are coming to my mind that I know that fit the description, maybe even myself included. And so it's a concept I'm enjoying hearing about. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I do have one last question for us today.
Mm.
What do the evolves think of us being created in the image of God?
Well, they would frame that as they wouldn't use the word God. So that we are created in the image that we were designed to be created with a piece of spirit, whether you want to call that soul or life force or spark. We're created with that, just like many beings are created with that, to have that life force that goes through them if you incarnate in any form. But the God thing, they wouldn't address it as we are created in the image of God. It's more about how we've been told that keeps us maybe on the right path, because it's more of a religious concept than it is a cosmic concept. We have been given everything in each incarnation. We have been created in the image of what we choose to be created into. Like if you take a look at what it is to be fully human, that's the image that we're created into. So that is addressing or being incorporated with the 7 seeds that we talked about before. It's staying neutral in our emotions. It's feeling our emotions, but it's being empathic, but not holding on to them. It's not allowing those emotions or anyone else's to encapsulate us or take us in a different direction. It's holding on to our sovereignty. It's being kind and considerate. It's being as intellectual as you can be. It's moving forward in your life. Like all of that in that evolution of being fully human is what we were designed to be. Then we make choices that might take us off that track. If you see that design as God, then you're designed as God in the fullness of the capacity that you can be. If that is God to you, if that is how you frame it as a God thing, then yes, the loving kindness, the acceptance, the allowance, all of that. If that's a God image to you, somebody that's loving and open-hearted, but then there's other gods out there that are very disciplined. They punish. So is that the kind of God image you want to be in? Or do you want to take out that punishment thing and say, let's stay neutral in our discussion, and you can be right and I can be right, or we can both agree that we can't agree. But is there something that happened? Can you stay neutral in that and allow that person to have their own judgment, to have their own opinion, to have their own way of being without creating a diversity or creating a conflict?
I think when I hear the term created in the image of God, I think it's more human. It's about being created human. Is the image of the creator a human form?
So if you look at a lot of the beings, even the multidimensional beings, many of them have 5 pieces. They have their 2 arms, they have 2 legs, and they have a head, right? It's that 5 number and how our bodies are, so that they may look different, but they have all their parts and pieces, right? That can be the image of whatever God perceived, not that God looks like that. And maybe he does. My perception of it, it's a universal, it's like a field, it's like a light. It's an energetic ball, if anything else. It's an energetic ball that creates and creates and creates and creates. So does it have a head and 2 arms and 2 legs? I guess it could create that way, or if you wanted to see it that way, But what I'm hearing from the evolves is like the image of God to them is the spark of life.
Right. That feels right.
That's how they see it. It's a spark. There is no definite form, whether you are reptilian or you are another species that doesn't have that. I mean, we have many species that don't have head, legs, and tails, head, legs, and arms, right? We have many species that still have a spark of God in them, or a spark of life in them, or they wouldn't be here. Their answer to that is the spark of life as a piece of that light bubble that I see, or that light image, comes from that. It's an intention. The spark of life is an original intention to bring life into form.
That makes so much more sense to me. But I also, from having a Kirlian camera, I can take images of a rock and see the spark, see the life force energy in an inanimate object, like coins that are man-made even. But certainly crystals, plain old stones out of the dirt, that they have that spark. And so everything is created with that spark. Forget the image.
Forget how it looks. Everything has that. And that's the life force. But it comes from intention to create.
That's my last question. Do you have anything else that they would like to share with us about the topic of incarnating?
The only thing that they would address is the in utero experience magnifies your will or lack of. That third chakra, that fire in the belly, even more so than the second one, that third chakra gets, it's not formed, it's not that third chakra becomes engaged more so in the utero experience initially, before the other ones become more engaged. Like that will, like where is your will to survive or not? Where is your will to complete your in utero experience or not? For those babies, those embryos that choose to not be born, they know that there's something wrong with the body and they're not willing to come in. So they abort themselves in the third, fourth, fifth month or whatever. That will space feels like that is the first access point of what gets more connected in utero experience. Like you have to have a will in some way to make it through. And then what is that will? Like if people could say, okay, what did it take for me to survive my in utero experience or my birthing? What did it take? And draw on the energy of why you're still here, because it did take something. It did take something of you to say, I still want to be here. Or you would have chose differently. You would have said, I don't want to breathe, or my body's too weak. I can't be here. I don't want to be in a deformed state when I come in. Something's missing. I don't want to do that. So focusing on the will, which brings us into spiritual resilience that comes from there. The will space comes into our spiritual resilience for the rest of our life. How do we manifest? How do we accentuate our spiritual resilience every day? And maybe that should be a subject matter that we could speak about in the future, is our spiritual resilience.
I'm writing it down. Well, that sounds like enough for today. I have a couple of announcements to make. Are you ready?
Yes.
So the first one, I want to make a recommendation. When you start to listen to this podcast, get a piece of paper and pencil or pen and write down the questions you have. As we talk, I bet you have questions, but we want to know what they are. We really would love more questions, things we didn't think of. So we want your help. You can send them to Darlene at soulunion.com, and then we'll talk about them. So please do that. The next thing is Darlene presents a live session of the Cosmic Travelers the third Sunday of each month. And again, you can sign up to attend that through soulunion.com as well. And Cosmic Travelers has a Facebook page now, and we have a little bit of a chat going. It would be great for you to search it on Facebook and join us. And then a reminder that Darlene spoke at the First Galactic Ambassadors Congress last month. It was published the beginning of March. Go to consciousawakeningnetwork.org and you can find all of the videos that were created for that event, and Darlene's will be there as well. And then last but not least, you can reach me if you want at livingwellbeing.net. All right. I think that's it for today.
Thank you, Melissa. You have been a pleasure in doing all these. Couldn't do it without you, dear.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm happy to be here. So,
all right, guys,
have
a good one. See you soon.